Hi, Glenn here, the People's Carpenter. I thought maybe I might finish this coat rack in this video, but I'm not going to because I decided there's one more little thing I should get to do a slightly better job. So this will have to wait, but I'm just about there, as you can see. I start to wrestle here with questions of style, like, okay, we want things to look old, but just like a person from the future who confused the 70s with the 90s when looking at music of this era, I don't want to be that person, and we want to make sure that when we make a period piece, it is the right period, and there is a risk here of mixing things up. A learning exercise, of course, but I'm going to show you how I created the rest of these design elements, especially this thing on the front, and the way that I shaped the top shelf. So keep watching. Hi there, over at the bandsaw I've milled up another piece of this oak. It's much too thick at the moment to simply stick onto the front. It would stick out far too much, so I'm going to resaw it like so. Now this is all somewhat experimental for me, but just bear with me while I try new things out while you watch. So what I'm going to do is take this thin sheet, a thin piece that I've made, and using double-sided tape, sticking it to this piece of MDF. That will make it easier to route an edge profile onto this piece, and you'll see why that's the case a bit later if it isn't obvious. But this piece of MDF is the same size and shape as my piece of oak. Okay, now just inspired by some of the examples that I've seen, but also motivated by a desire to make it easy for myself, I'm picking a fairly simple type of design that I've seen. Now I don't know what methods they used to create those designs, because obviously there are no videos of them doing so, since it was more than 100 years ago. It might be detailed in books somewhere, but I don't have any written instructions on how to do this. So I've just been thinking about how I might reproduce the idea in my head, and I've come up with the idea of using hole saws as a good way of creating perfect circles. So first of all, I'm gonna find the middle of this piece just by crossing the diagonals. Okay, so there is my middle. And now, the very edge of this hole saw hangs over the edge of the blade, but the inside edge of the blade is within the lines, and that's what matters here. This is just a visual guide for me. I realize a hole saw doesn't make a perfect circle because it's jagged. It's just a guide for me while I work out where everything's going to sit. Okay, so I don't want to cut this out all the way through initially, because there's some stuff that I want to do in the middle of this circle. Maybe I should do that first. There's going to be a circle within a circle. I think that's about right, actually. No. I think I'll go smaller. Yeah, that's better. to help me do the routing inside that circle, I'm going to get another piece of MDF if I can find one and make a hole that size and use that as a template for the top. Okay, there is the hole. Now I'll just move this into a place where I'm going to be able to clamp it. Now I'm using what's called a bowl cutting bit, which is fairly wide and it's got curved shoulders on it, so that the inside of a bowl has a curved edge on the inside. Right, just a little bit deeper. Alright, so it looks like the inside of a bowl or a plate, which is the purpose of these bits. Right, and now to cut out this circle, and this will give me another opportunity to just make sure that everything is lined up. Because it looks like I may need to move my circle slightly this way, and I can make up for that by changing the lengths of these side pieces, because this piece is going to be cut into 3 separate pieces. Getting the plug back out of a hole saw can be a bit of a nuisance though. Alright, that has avoided too much damage, which is good, because I'm going to be cutting all of this out as a plug, and I'm going to want to keep that piece, so I need to be able to get it out of here without causing too much harm. So perhaps it would be smart to put some tape there before I do it. Yeah, I will. I'll put some tape there before I do it, just to possibly offer a small amount of protection. In the meantime, okay, that looks a bit better. Yeah, good. Yes. Cutting this out is going to be a bit scary. Not because I think I'll harm myself. It's not a particularly dangerous tool, the drill press, but I could, damage things, and I don't want to do that. Let's do it. I learned from cutting the template that you have to go slow. That's as deep as this hole saw will go. As you can see, it's not a very deep one, but that will be enough, I think. I accidentally didn't record the footage, but what I did after I cut almost all the way through with the hole saw is using the, I guess you'd call it the trench, the channel left by the hole saw. I used my bandsaw to cut along that and to separate these pieces fully, and now I'm just, well, I have been tidying them up, tidying these ends up with a router and sandpaper. And what I noticed, and I kind of realized it earlier, but now I see what a problem it is that although I referred to this stuff as MDF, because it has like an MDF veneer on the surface. It's really not MDF, it's kind of this awful particle board, and there's some little pieces that have broken out on these tips. This particle board isn't anywhere near as stable or consistent in texture as MDF, and I'm not going to be comfortable riding the bearing of a router bit along the edge of that particle board, which is what I want to do, because that gap there and that gap there will cause me some trouble. So using these pieces of oak as a template, I'll find a piece of actual MDF. I need to buy some more, but I know I have some scraps around, and I will make new templates. This stage that I'm about to do now is the whole reason for attaching these pieces that I'm making to a template on the back. I've got a cove bit in the router that will cut away a concave piece from the edge here, and it might actually be okay with the bearing riding along the side of this piece, but it wouldn't give me very much to hold on to, and I think I'm going to raise this bit sufficiently far that the bearing will be mostly riding on the template, and that's the reason that it's there. So I'll do this in several passes. This first pass won't remove very much at all. Oops. I've still got the machine unplugged, which is what you should always do when changing bits. Okay, I think that'll do. That has... will that do or will it not? Do I want to bring the cove right down to the bottom of that edge? No, actually I think that's fine. So now I'll just clean this up with sandpaper, with some steel wool. I think that will be ideal for cleaning out that middle bit. And also I will put a cove around the edge of those other two pieces which are now on good solid MDF templates. Just in the interest of making these pieces possibly more interesting, I'm going to cut the ends round. I'll use the bandsaw, and then I'll use tape, double-sided tape, to attach that circle, and use a router to trim it nice and round before I finish routing the edge profile over at the router table. Probably not going to include this type of activity much in my videos, but rest assured there is plenty of sanding and tidying up that goes on. As I mentioned I'm just smoothing the interior of this circle using some superfine steel wool. Now the truth is, this is just to make it not particularly rough and somewhat smooth. You don't have to get it glassy smooth. If you're going to be oiling a piece of wood, then yeah, you might want to get it really smooth, because the oil won't really create much of a film on the surface. Maybe some, but not much. But if you're going to be putting any sort of varnish on, then there's no point going ultra smooth, because only do it to the point where it's aesthetically pleasing, but the varnish itself is going to create a film on the surface, so there's no point in trying to create glass. Okay, so the ornamental pieces are at a stage where I would say they're pretty much ready. Now I need to finish off the top shelf. So this is how it's starting to look. Nothing here is attached, it's all just sitting loosely, but I think I like how it's coming along. My only worry, I'm going to go ahead with what I've got here anyway, but my only worry is that there is a slightly different style evoked by these designs, which almost look mid-century, well, almost sort of 1930s, 40s, maybe almost Art Deco, compared with this style here. And it's very subtle. I think it's this piece that's doing it, but I think it works enough that I'm going to go ahead and use it anyway. But as I said, it's time to think about this top shelf. So I'll set the rest of it aside for just now. Now, I've been browsing through pictures of these items of furniture just to see the way the top is treated, and it varies a lot. Sometimes they're really just rectangles like this with slight roundovers. Sometimes they're quite elaborately shaped. This isn't very large, it's not very deep, so I'm not going to get very elaborate, and the rest of the piece is not very elaborate either. So I'm going to make this fairly simple, which I think also works well with my level of skill and experience with this sort of thing. So I'm just going to have concaves in the corners and then a profile around the edge. And the profile will actually be on the bottom edge because that's what will be more visible when this thing is installed on the wall. The top will just have a subtle round over to make it comfortable. So let's design that now. There's very little design involved, but I'll do it. I'm not even measuring what size that is, but that looks about good enough to me. I'm going to use a hole saw to cut away. That should be doable. You know, sometimes it can be risky when you've got a hole saw overlapping something, but I think if I hold everything in place sturdily while I'm doing the sawing, I should be all right. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Now I'll put this in the drill press and make the cut. So first, the very slight round over on what will be the top edge. And with all my roundovers, I give them 2 passes. The first one was probably, or maybe sufficient, but the second one is just in case there was any inconsistent pressure or parts that I briefly skipped along the way. All right, now let's flip this over. Probably going to want to hold it a bit more securely. Or what's an easy way to clamp this? I'll probably just do it in a couple of movements. I'll do the first half and then the second half, and I'll use a couple of clamps. Just because I really don't want it to move while I'm doing this cut, which is more substantial. Here I'll be using my larger Triton router, combining 2 words, and applying a round over, a much larger one. Right, now deeper, and not like philosophy. Right. I've missed a spot right on the corner here, so I'll touch that up. That has gone well. Now it's just going to be a case of sanding and smoothing where those little burn marks have appeared and tidying this piece up. But that is nice. And try not to destroy it straight away. Just as I'm looking over these pieces, starting to do the final cleanup and sanding of any burns or rough patches, I mean, I know sometimes, I don't know if I do it much in this channel, but in my lifetime I have complained about how expensive good router bits are, but this is just another case of me appreciating how much they are probably worth it. This is the upright that I routed using a very small roundover bit that I have. It's a cheap roundover. It has 2 blades, which is fairly common, but it's not a particularly what you would call nice one. And I can feel, there are some fairly rough patches as it starts to go across the grain. The burn marks are, they're not as bad as they could be, but they're bad enough. That's going to require, some work getting in there and sanding this all not as smooth as I would like. This is the top shelf that I have just routed using, again, not a hugely expensive, but certainly more expensive and larger and better quality roundover bit with 4 blades, which produces a much smoother finish. I've done a small amount of sanding to tidy this up, but not much. That is just so much nicer, and that is going to save me so much time. So look, I am just going to go back to some places that sell expensive bits. I'm going to go to Radian because I know they're very good. The other bit isn't a Radian, but I just know Radian is good, and I'm going to buy some nice profiling bits to avoid having to do that kind of follow-up work, because it really is worth it. See, I'm online now looking at sellers of nice bits. This is the Amana tool store in the United States. Amana make really nice bits. Some of them I would say are on the same level as as Radian. They do some 4-blade cutters like this Cove bit, but what I'm finding is that most of the really good quality looking bits at the store at Amazon that have 4 blades do not ship to New Zealand. And it's not that Amana don't ship to New Zealand, they ship most of their blades, but for some reason, selected really good ones, they just won't. And I don't know what reason that is. It has to be some kind of policy, but that's kind of frustrating. Now, I'm sure they're not going under because of this. There is a large enough market in the UK, but they don't care, in the US I should say, but they don't care about us. So I've decided this is not the video in which I will finish this build. There is going to be one more comparatively short video in which I finish that off, and that's because I am going to reroute, just touch lightly again, the profile on this vertical piece. Once I get the new router bits that I ordered today. I ended up going with Amana, although I said I would do Radian. Last time I bought a couple of really nice expensive router bits, it was Radian, so I'm trying someone else this time, Amana, mostly because it was a fair bit cheaper, but it is going to be a 4-blade cutter. I managed to find one that they would send, and it looks like it's going to do a really good job, so that I won't have to do so much sanding, which will really be worth it. So I'll finish this here and come back to you shortly, depending on how quickly the router bits arrive. The next video may be about the coat rack, or it might actually be another project that I'm already working on, but I won't be long this time.